Alan, so we have a huge mess. That's where I'll start. How are we going to start this process? We need to strategize how we're going to maneuver through these next couple of years. We also need to create coalitions on the ground and one-on-one. What do you suggest the first step should be?
Well, I think there's a few things that people need to recognize. First of all, obviously we need to change governmental policy. If you look at what's happened in the global economy and in the American economy in the post-World War II period, there was a big shift with Ronald Reagan in 1980. There was a shift overseas with Margaret Thatcher in 1979. And the sort of free market will solve everything ideology that was put forward really got solidified and unchallenged once you had Tony Blair leading the Labor Party and Bill Clinton the Democratic Party.
Exactly.
So you had a consensus for what in global terms was called the neoliberal economic system. Now, if you look at the neoliberal economic system, how was that put in place? Yes, we live in a society where corporations, wealthy people have a lot of power, but how that was achieved was through shifts in governmental policy. In other words, the economic right recognized they needed to control the mechanisms of government to create the regulated market that worked for their ends. So now we have to win governmental power and change the rules of the way the economy is structured so that we can have greater economic, we won't have the kind of wealth inequality, we'll have more equitable distribution of wealth. And again, this society does generate a tremendous amount of wealth, so if we achieve that, we can go back to people having lives that are not under such duress. They can lead middle-class lives. We can have things like 6-week vacations, and as technology develops, 8 weeks of vacation and 3 months of vacation.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to labor so much, and we can have comfortable middle-class lives. We can all do better with all the abundance that we have in this society, but it's going to take controlling the mechanisms of government. And the opening that we have in this country remains the democratic process. And it's tough because the Democratic Party has consistently betrayed the needs and interests of the general population of the American people. But really, with Bernie Sanders and the organization that I'm head of, Progressive Democrats of America, played a big role in this because we were the sole national organization that was involved in drafting Bernie Sanders to run for president in 2013. And as our name betrays, we were doing so that he run as a Democrat. And paradoxically, Ralph Nader, and by the way, I've been the executive producer of the Ralph Nader Radio Hour, Nader was discouraging to run as a Democrat, as he had not done in 2000 famously, saying, Bernie Sanders, if you run as a Democrat, you're going to be out by Iowa and New Hampshire, you'll be done, no one will remember you. If you go as an independent, you can go all the way through the spring, the summer, the fall, your voice will be heard. Well, of course, there was a lot of negative impact from, depending on how you interpret the historical moment in 2000, from Nader's run. Bernie saw that, saw how Nader became marginalized after that, chose to run as a Democrat, even though he'd been a lifelong independent. And now, with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez getting elected in 2018 as a Democrat, not an independent like Sanders, but an actual Democrat, the Democratic Party is a space of contestation where you have the neoliberal centrists, and you have now the social democratic socialist left, which most of the public agrees with. Yes. If you look at the opinion polls
even
issue by
Fox
issue.
News town hall.
There we go, even on a Fox News town hall. And again, there's a lot of opening up and discourse about things like a federal job guarantee program, universal basic income, that were unheard of or unthought of really before you had the rise of Bernie Sanders. You can also maybe argue Jeremy Corbyn in the UK as well.
Yes.
So there's been, at least in these two Anglophone countries, rising social democratic left. Unexpectedly, I think the centrists are surprised by that. Of course, they were also surprised by Trump's election too, but things are changing, and that's because the population is dissatisfied with the economic status quo, particularly after the market crash. They tried to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, but they did it with even greater austerity for the masses and even more wealth only going to the 1%.
Exactly.
So how we change things, I do think at the moment, at this hour, the space of contestation is within the Democratic Party.
Because, well, that's the structure that we have.
We have a two-party
system,
right.
and we don't have, it's not open
and
like the parliamentary process.
And I don't waste my time trying to analyze exactly why the American history is always, the electoral system has collapsed into a two-party system, but it always has.